everybody? Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I'm here with a group of very smart individuals here to talk with us about ACA International's cybersecurity initiatives. How are you gentlemen doing today?
Doing great.
Very good. Thanks,
Doing
Adam.
well, Adam. Excited to be here.
So excited to have you guys on here. I'm going to do a quick run through. I know normally we like to do backgrounds, but with so many of us on the call today, I'm going to kind of abbreviate this so we can get to the meat and potatoes of our discussion. But Chanh here has been working with American Business Communications, has been an ACA partner for decades now, and starting on the long distance and phone side of the communications world, now very focused on the digital aspects, who then brought in Jonathan with TPX, who's here to talk to us about the cybersecurity side of the world, protecting ourselves from a digital perspective. And then most of you probably are already familiar with Samir. If you have not seen him on stage at a conference, I'm sure you've run across him at ACA or someplace else, but one of the more well-known IT professionals across the space, and just someone that I like to go deep nerd with sometimes, because I feel like he's one of the people out there that truly just kind of understands not only the business aspects of the challenges that we face, but is able to translate those into the technical needs that an organization has. And working with State Collection Service now for about 3 years, Samir?
Yeah, it's 3 years in September. So excited.
Right, but been around the space for significantly longer.
Absolutely.
Does that all sound like a pretty good baseline of where we can start our discussion today, gentlemen?
Yeah, it sounds great. Which, by the way, Adam, what's the record for the amount of times the word nerd has been said in 2 minutes of a podcast?
Oh, I'm going to say I'm probably going to be able to get there because I'm a data nerd on top of the technology side.
Well, I think what's more interesting, Jonathan, is that I've never heard nerd used as a verb before.
Ooh, good point. 4, ding.
Hey, look, if we're not going to have fun doing it, why are we doing it?
Why are we doing it?
Amen. Amen.
I'm perfectly okay with who I am. I am a nerd. I enjoy the data. I enjoy the tech. I enjoy the security aspects of all of this. But, you know, just to give our audience some context to our discussion today, can you guys tell me a little bit about what the objective is with this new ACA initiative?
Chan, why don't you go
thank
first?
you. So, wanted to provide ACA and its more importantly its members thought leadership in this cybersecurity space. Wanted to help members define the what in the landscape, but also the how, right? And bringing together IT professionals and security experts to help identify best practices that can help a small and medium-sized agency navigate the regulatory landscape as well as the client requirements.
And the client requirements are significant, right? And I feel like those things are starting to meld and blend together pretty significantly here. So Jonathan, from your perspective, right, you're coming in from kind of outside of the industry with this cybersecurity expertise. What's your experience been like starting to work with some of these, let's call it mid to small agencies?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, many of these folks don't have a cybersecurity practitioner. They might have somebody who's jailbroken an iPhone and, voila, now they've become the cybersecurity expert or the IT leader. But in many cases, they don't. They don't even have that. And so when you get a regulatory that is demanded of you that is very technical, and GLBA safeguards, that's a very technical one where it's very specific. You have to build a cybersecurity program day one. It's really like deer in headlights. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know where to start with this. And so it was so important for ACA members to have someone clarify, what the heck is this thing? Put it in just simple terms. Remove the acronyms, remove the technologies, and just get it simple so that I can do the business I need to do. Make me defensible. And so that was probably the first thing we realized. We needed to make this simple for them and help eliminate all the noise associated with the threat landscape and the cybersecurity vendor landscape, and instead speak in just simple business terms.
I think that's a massive lift for this industry, right? I feel like the collections industry has always been a little slow to adapt to new technology. But Samir, from your perspective, right, as somebody who is responsible for the technology infrastructure of I'm going to call it a large collection agency, what
Yep.
value are you finding from these discussions, right, for
So,
someone who's got a more technical approach?
so Adam, if you look at what's happened in our industry, right, you can lose a client and still be in business, right? But cybersecurity is the biggest threat to our business.
Hmm.
Literally, you could have an event and you could be a decades old agency and get wiped out. We've seen that that's happening in news. So to me, it's an opportunity to share best practices and, selfishly for me, it's to learn what other people are doing, right?
Hmm.
Not only share what I'm doing, but I'm not the smartest guy. There are a lot of smart people in our industry, and to learn from them and see how we as an industry can get better and protect ourselves. Um, that to me is one of the biggest risks, and it's not just about technical people, right? We were on the ACA San Diego conference. People were talking about insurance. There were things that I learned that I went
Hmm.
to RGC and said, "Hey, have we thought about this?" Because there was some conversations about insurance and even cybersecurity insurance, where to get it, how to get it, and what to watch out for.
Hmm.
So it's to me, it's all about making ourselves better, learning from other folks, because I'll selfishly say I don't know all the answers. There are a lot of smart people, and share what very little or what I know.
I love your approach, right? It's for such a technical person to say, okay, hey, look, there's all these non-technical items that I need to start concentrating on within my cybersecurity threat landscape.
Yep.
And whether that be the insurance and understanding how many records I'm controlling or managing and what my risk level really is, which is going to directly drive those cybersecurity premiums, right? The
Yeah.
volume of accounts that you're looking
Yeah.
to ultimately defend, and how are you managing that data? Are you taking things offline, or is everything staying online? What does that world really look like? And then I think to Jonathan's original point was like, how do you explain this in non-technical terms to those executives that are struggling to turn on their computer in the morning? Right, there's you
Yeah.
got to be able to speak to a whole breadth of different skill sets simultaneously. So how have you guys kind of taken an approach to be able to provide value to somebody at Samir's level, but also somebody at that, let me figure out where the on button is level, right? Like, how do you speak to both crowds at the same time?
That's a great question. It starts with listening. Truly does.
Fair.
Because when I talk to someone based off of the terms they use,
Mhm.
based off of their concerns and what they're trying to achieve, the objective, I usually can hear the level of expertise. And based off of hearing the level of expertise, we can then provide the solution that is that outcome.
Mhm.
For an organization that, as I mentioned before, doesn't have a practitioner in cybersecurity, their outcome is just make me defensible.
Mhm.
Make me defensible. Give me the outline, the roadmap, the gosh. If you remember the board game Life, Adam, I don't know if you're in my background of age here, but you had this winding road, and for organizations, they need to go through that winding road of regulatory and cybersecurity to get to defensibility.
Mhm.
And so plot it, make it simple on how they can get there, and be very specific about how we are going to lead them and make them defensible as they go through this. Because it's not day one, you are compliant. And you're not going to be,
Sure.
but
Yep.
you can be defensible. I talk a lot about how I always want to be defensible with my marriage. I got an anniversary coming up. I want to make sure that, I've got that gift. Might not be in the house in my hand on the anniversary date, but I've got a printout and I put it in a card and I hand that over, and now I'm defensible. The same thing's true with an audit. You want to be defensible to those requirements, the controls. For someone like Samir's understands regulatory, has a security program, but there
Mhm.
might be specific aspects of the program that needs to be reinforced. There might be an objective he has, which, for example, might be, I just need that third party validation. And
Mhm.
so providing that, as well as threat visibility to the threat landscape, augmenting his team with what we're seeing throughout our customer base. But it starts with listening. It starts with listening to who the practitioners are, what they have to say.
Yeah, I think that,
So let me
Adam. So the other
go
thing
ahead.
that I think to answer your question is that when we had the idea working with Scott Purcell of ACA to put together this collective, we also understood that there was a wide range of ability and resources.
Mhm.
So we tried to create a structure that allowed for participation on all levels, whether you
Okay.
were had no knowledge or you are Samir, that you would have a value proposition and a stake in this community. So we're trying to encourage, and we have a structure that welcomes all members, right, of any level, and hopefully, as a community, we can raise the awareness and also the knowledge by having a dialogue. Really, it's really having a conversation about this topic on various aspects. Cybersecurity is being one. A very vast, definition of what makes cybersecurity, right? So insurance comes into play, regulatory comes into play. You name it. That's what we had in mind in terms of creating this structure.
So as you guys are going through it's called the education and discussion process with the ACA members, how much of the time are we spending talking about, let's call it the technical penetration aspects versus the social engineering threats that exist in the landscape, right? And I'll use an example for those that haven't read it. I was a huge fan of the Kevin Mitnick books. He was the hacker in the 90s. See, Jonathan, we do fall into that same age bracket.
Yes, yes.
Right? He was the hacker from the 90s that they locked in solitary confinement because they were concerned that he was going to use a payphone to launch a nuclear warhead. Like, it was some of the most ridiculous things you've ever heard. But he wrote 2 books. Well, he actually wrote a bunch of books, but 2 books that I've kind of focused on, which was The Art of Penetration, which was how am I going, or Art of Intrusion rather, which is how am I going to physically, or how am I going to penetrate systems from a technology standpoint. And the other one was I was on social engineering. It was the Art of Deception, and it was talking about how most of these hacks are happening by tricking somebody into taking an action, clicking on a link, providing a piece of information. So as you guys are going through this kind of like education process, are we looking at kind of both angles of this, or is this more focused on the technical aspects?
So, I mean, even on our San Diego conference, right? So most of the companies have a decent, I would say, the technology side is relatively locked down. You don't see open ports. People are doing, people have a firewall. The ports are locked down. There is, updates happening, things like that. Although you'll be surprised, some of the hacks that have happened have been because the computers weren't patched, which is a separate story altogether. But I think the biggest threat is your weakest link, and your weakest link are people, right? That's the social aspect is definitely something that is of great that to me is a greater risk. I'm more worried about the agent who's going to click on a link that will start a malware or ransomware attack than I am I am worried about my firewall, but I feel my firewall, once it's set, we got the ports locked down, we're running monthly penetration tests, we're running vulnerability scans, we're patching our systems. That's manageable. What is unpredictable is, even though, believe it or not, we send out phishing emails, right, to train people, hey, what not to click. And like today is a perfect day. We have a class of 8 people who clicked on links which they shouldn't be, which we generated. Like for phishing attacks, we simulated a phishing attack, and they clicked on it, and they're going to be again reminded, hey, do not click on this link if it's not coming from a domain, or the basic stuff, right? Like if somebody's offering you $500 Amazon card, or you see an email that looks like it's coming from HR, but the email address is not stcol.com, it's Gmail. Like, we're gonna go through this with those 8 people again. Believe it, it still happens, even though we do this on a monthly basis. Everybody knows we're simulating these attacks,
Mm-hmm.
but still people click on it. That's what keeps me up, because
I can imagine that keeps you awake at night, right? Because it is the threat of the physical people and their behaviors that
yes,
ultimately are going to. I mean, look at Sony, right? Like that's
yeah,
a perfect example.
yeah.
We'll look at kind of how it's really just tricking somebody on the phone, or all the people that are sending bank wires to the wrong locations. I mean, hell, in the last 5 days, I've probably gotten 5 different emails with fake invoices from various organizations that I don't actually do business with.
Yeah.
But I can imagine if you get your uniforms from Cintas, that you probably are also getting these phishing emails, and they may be more effective.
Oh, one of the this was my previous life. We had recently made an acquisition, and we
Mhm.
put it out on LinkedIn. And our director of finance, she got spearfished. So an email came from our CEO saying, "Total top secret. We're looking at another acquisition. You know, not to be discussed even with the CFO. I'm sitting with the because we put out who the private equity buyers were or what have you. Like
Sure.
they basically gleaned through LinkedIn, drafted an email with so much relevant content, and here, a director of finance is about to make a transfer because he thinks, or they got an email from our CEO, not to be
Yeah.
shared because it's super secret, right? So these guys are getting way smarter. It's unbelievable. So that's my biggest concern is social engineering.
And I think
You know,
Fair enough.
the other thing is that it's coming through different mediums, right? It's not just email
Sure.
too, right?
Yeah.
Now texting, right, along the same
Mhm.
lines, right? Again, based on social engineering, they
Yep.
understand your makeup, and they send content that's relevant, but they come at you in different mediums, and so it's
Mhm.
not just email, right? It's any and all mediums are fair game now, and that's you keep getting bombarded, you might slip, right? You might forget, and that's
Yep.
what they're banking on, right? So it's these types of items and issues that we want to have a dialogue about, and again promote and share these concerns.
Adam, the one last thing on this that I think is so important for people to realize: too often we just go, "Listen, users are stupid." Right? We stupid's going to happen. Users are stupid, but it happens to everyone, and the
Mhm.
reason it happens to everyone is, well, it's multiple reasons. First, what's the easiest thing to do if I'm an attacker? It's to send an email to a million people. Like I click one button and it goes to a million. I click one button and could go just to 10, but it's just one button that I got to click.
Mhm.
Versus if I'm going to try to attack a network and actually go and grab the informational analysis and try to get access, go through the ports, find a vulnerability, penetrate through, find that takes so much more time. Listen, I'd much rather send an email, get on my PlayStation, play some NCAA 25 football that I haven't played in a long time because it hasn't been out, than have to spend the time to focus on an attack. The second thing is, man, these emails are getting good. Like,
Mhm.
listen, the one I always talk about is Chick-fil-A. There's a perfect Chick-fil-A fish out there where, and it's not fit. Chick-fil-A is not selling fish, everybody. So just relax on that. No, there's a Chick-fil-A fish out there where it's talking about their new, I think it's the summer strawberry lemonade tea or whatever,
Mhm.
and get your free one. Well, geez, I'm a Chick-fil-A one subscriber. I would think many
Yep.
people are. I love Chick-fil-A. So that sucker comes in. I'm at work. I've got my Outlook open. I also have my Gmail open. I'm like, yeah, I want my free sweet tea. I click the button. I go to a authentication page for Chick-fil-A one. By the way, I've got a quote due or I've got a presentation I'm supposed to be getting done. I might have had a fight with my dog. Who knows what's going on? But my
Mhm.
vigilance has lowered. And that's all it takes. Because I then authenticate, it says, hey, wrong password, points me to the right Chick-fil-A one page. When I then authenticate, get in, I can't find where that thing is. I go, well, it must be in my account somewhere, and I keep on going on my day.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, they have my user ID and password.
Yep.
Now, could that be the same user ID password that I use for my Gmail, for my bank, for anything else? Sure. Could it be the same one I use for work? Possibly. LinkedIn? Yep. Facebook? Probably. That's the problem. And it all stemmed from an email that looks so authentic. I
Mhm.
love Chick-fil-A, you love Chick-fil-A, and I'm a little bit distracted. So it's easy. That's the real point of it.
And that's because they're not using a password management tool to use
Yes.
unique identified
Yes.
passwords for each and
Yes.
every attempt to log into anything. I mean, I call me
Absolutely.
ultra paranoid, but like, I mean, without a password manager, I would never be able to get into anything ever again because how many times have we seen, right? And I'm pretty sure that's what happened with the Sony hack is they got one piece or they got one use of a password and then they used it across all of the different penetration points. And now that we live so much in the cloud, because there was a time where everybody accessed their email only through specific through specific ports.
Yep.
Right.
Now we're in a position where everything is cloud-based, so those same authentications, and if you're not looking at it, or if you're not even doing the simple things like putting a HTTP blocker in your Chrome browser, like as we were logging into this thing to do this meeting, you're like, I got to go turn off these 25 different extensions so that all of my functionality will work while we're recording through a browser. Man, I got nothing but respect for that, right? I go through the same thing. I have to use a different browser that's specifically set up for these purposes, because we are, as humans, going to make mistakes. And if I don't have an HTTP blocker in there, and it's going to show me pages that don't have the secure S at the end, well, then I might miss something as I'm going through the speed of my normal day. And I consider myself to be kind of a nerd, right? Like I could throw the word in there one more time there. But like I feel like that's one of those challenges that we face as an industry. You start stacking on the availability of the cloud, you start stacking on all of these other things. If you're not putting some tools in place to at least give you a base level of protection, it's easy to make a mistake no matter who you are.
Right.
Yep.
Right. You know, the one of the things I always talk about is as on average, the average user has 4 or 5 passwords, and they have that's the average number, 4 or 5, and they are similar. So, you know, it's like, all right, this year my password is, you know, Washington Capitals 24. It's got to change next year. You know what I'm going to change it to?
25.
Washington Capitals 25. Exactly. You know, like, woohoo, I'm getting secure. But one of the things that shocks people is I say, I've had a password manager since 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell folks, I don't care what password manager you use. Just use a password manager.
Mm-hmm.
In a perfect world, don't use your Chrome browser for password management. But I'm not going to be, you know, choosy here. But I ask people, I've been using a password manager since 2012. How many accounts do you think are in my password manager? And people guess. They go, oh, 40.
I would say
60,
250.
over 1,200.
1,200.
Okay.
And here's why. Since 2012, I've worked for 4 different companies.
Okay.
Since 2012, I've got kids, so I bought 4 cars. Since 2012, I've had 5 different healthcare providers because of changing. You know, with each car, you got Sirius, you got your, you know, finance, you got your
dealer.
Yeah, I mean, you know, every time my kid plays a sport, I've got a new account. Every time they change schools, they're all in college. I've got those different accounts. You have so many accounts. We don't realize how many accounts we have. And that's what the attackers love. Is that fact.
Fair statement. Look, I got moved over to a password manager, and I want to say it was probably about 2012. I had a Twitter account that got, like, they didn't even get hacked. If somebody was attempting to access it, they got far enough to send me a 2-factor, and I went, oh my God, I better go learn about password management tools, and then spent the remainder of the next 2 days changing every password. And I still go through and look at my evaluation of my current passwords on, let's call it, a quarterly basis to make sure that we're updating, nothing's getting too old, and then monitoring the dark web to see what else might pop up. But I think the point here from an ACA membership perspective is that this is an opportunity for members to get together and have these discussions. There's some really simple things that executives, IT professionals, and others across your organizations can be doing to secure your network, to secure your business, and to secure their personal lives, to be quite frank. And so this is that location and opportunity for everyone to come together, have these types of discussions, and learn from each other. Because Jonathan, I feel like we have to have a webinar about some of this at some point, because there's so many different aspects, and we could go so deep down the rabbit hole when it comes to how executives can be protecting themselves. I mean, how many people watching this right now don't have a VPN and are going to go connect to the local Marriott hotel the next time that they're staying there, not understanding that it could just be a pineapple sitting in somebody's room, and I don't mean the fruit. these types of conversations, I think, are where it really starts to get interesting, and where our industry, I feel like, has a weak point. And I love that you guys are coming together to facilitate these discussions across the various skill sets that exist within the ACA membership.
That's one of the keys of the collective is certainly everything that Samir and Chan have said is absolutely true. But also, people can't hire the practitioners. They're so costly for majority of the ACA members.
Mm-hmm.
So how could they organically grow some of this knowledge? Well, this is the idea. The idea is that through the collective, take your latest hire, take someone who's just out of school, take someone who says, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years and for whatever reason, I think cybersecurity is interesting, and be active in the collective, and they can learn. We've talked about what type of vulnerability scanners you could go and use just in a free manner that are open source that you can try out to understand how vulnerabilities occur, how they're taken advantage of. We've talked through about just what a gap assessment is and what a control is, and how a control is an objective, not a word for word requirement. It's the outcome that you seek, and focus on the outcome. So it's about learning and building some of that expertise so that you don't have to be just relying on one consultant or reliant on one technology vendor, but instead start to build some of that expertise.
I love the building of that competence within your own organization, because even if you go out and you hire the best cybersecurity professional out there, you still have the weak point of the CEO, the executive team, clicking links, doing these other things. So I think at least providing some level of education and discussion forum for those types of topics really can create a positive change within an organization itself. And I think that cybersecurity often just gets put into the Samir bucket, right? Like, oh, this is an IT problem. We're just going to give this to Samir over here. But that's not the reality of it. The reality is that a cyber threat is across your organization, and there's nobody who's exempt from it.
Yeah.
Culture.
In fact, it's a cultural thing. And you know what? At State, our training team is actively engaged in it. They are the ones that are going to go and do this phishing attack training again, right? It's our ops team, because we understand it's not one person's problem, right? I mean, it's your weakest link. Anybody can click on that email and
And so for an ACA member who wants to participate in the collective, what's the first step? How do they get engaged?
So they send an email to member services, of which then they will be verified by ACA as a ACA member. And then from there, they will get an invitation email to sign into the LinkedIn group. And it's by invitation, but it is open to anybody and everybody within the ACA community.
Well, that sounds fantastic. As an ACA member, I'll be going to join myself here. That was part of the reason that I wanted to ask the question, because I do want to get engaged with this, and I want to get my team engaged, because I feel like this is such an important initiative across our industry. Well, gentlemen, thank you for coming on and having this conversation with me today. I think you guys are working on some really incredible things, and I hope that the industry is really listening and taking this opportunity to learn from all of your expertise.
Thank you very much.
It's been great.
For the time.
And I will say this industry, just real fast, they're begging for this type of information.
Agreed.
They're looking for someone just to help them, and that's part of our responsibility in the cybersecurity vendor landscape, is we need to educate, because it affects the fabric of our lives.
Yep.
This is not just a business conversation. This is about societal conversation. If we don't secure the small, medium businesses, it affects our day to day.
I agree. It provides us we need that opportunity to defend ourselves as small and medium-sized businesses, because the threat doesn't change based on the size of your business, right? You could be the largest agency in the country or the smallest. Your threat landscape from the outside remains the same, and nobody is too small to be noticed online. There's plenty of scanners and port checkers and all kinds of other tool sets that help these people identify potential targets that are just not paying attention. So if you're an ACA member and you're concerned about your business, I highly suggest getting involved and engaged. You're going to find me there because I'm going to go sign up for this as soon as we jump off this call. But gentlemen, thank you again for coming on today. For those of you that have additional questions you'd like to ask the team here, you can leave those in the comments on LinkedIn and YouTube, and we'll be responding to those. Or if you have additional topics you'd like to see us discuss, you can put those in the comments below as well. And hopefully I can get these gentlemen to come back at least one more time to help me continue to create great content for a great industry. But until next time, gentlemen, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you all.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for watching. We'll see y'all again soon. Bye, everybody.